All right, guys, so today in front of me we have the Larceny Batch B523. Is this Heaven Hill's best release so far this year? Alright guys, so as I stated, this is the Larceny Batch B523. As with the Elijah Craig Barrel Proof releases, these are released 3 different times a year. There's the A Batch, the B Batch, and the C Batch. So this one comes in at 124.4 proof, is 6 to 8 years old, and mash bill on this one is 68% corn, 20% wheat, 12% malted barley. Is this the best release from Heaven Hill so far this year, guys? Let's find out. Let's get in the nose. So further into the glass, I start to pull out some like soft kind of cherry notes. I do get a very nice sweet oak, and there's a lot of caramel richness on this one. It's very, very sweet on the nose, but then also, again, getting some of that, I wouldn't say it's an overly oaked, but you definitely get some pungent kind of like a sweet oak in there further into the glass. Further away from the glass, there is kind of a nice kind of sweet vanilla, like fudge note to it. That cherry still makes a little bit more of its appearance there further away from the glass. But again, still a lot of nice caramels further away from the glass. The oak not really present further away. That's more further into the glass. I do like midway to like the like further into the glass. There is like more of a like a ripe red kind of fruit note to it. It's not necessarily that cherry note, but there's like something else that's in addition to that. But again, a lot of nice sweet oak to it, very dominating. Really nice rich caramel. It smells like it's going to be creamy and dense. Smells like it's going to have a really nice mouthfeel to it. But again, there is like this kind of like bright red fruit, other than a cherry, that's in addition, to some of those notes. Let's get into the palate, guys. Cheers. Yeah, so one thing I'll say on this one is this one comes off very soft on the palate. First sip, you do get like a lot of baking spices on there, but you're not getting hit with like a ton of proof. On the front of the palate, more of a buttery kind of caramel to the front of the palate. Not so much a lot of vanilla sweetness to it, but then as you get to the middle of the palate, you start to pull out some of that nutmeg. You start to pull out. I do get like a little bit of like some cola notes there on the middle of the palate, and into the finish, that kind of like that buttery kind of caramel. There's more of a dense kind of oak on this one, not so much sweet oak like I was getting on the nose, but more of a dense oak that kind of sits back there. It's got a really nice finish to it. Medium to long finish, almost borderline on that long side. Really nice mouthfeel to it. Again, those baking spices are still kind of like tingling around the palate. And there's no rye in here. There's 68% corn, 20% wheat, and 12% malted barley. So you're not getting any rye spice on it. But I think that softness on the palate is definitely influenced by the wheat on here. It's really good. Let's get in the next sip, guys. So that second sip coated the palate even more. It's a very kind of buttery caramel on the front to mid palate, and once it hits that mid palate, you get some of those baking spices. There's some cinnamon, there's some nutmeg in there, but then I started to pull out a little bit of some cola in there across the middle of the palate, and that's starting to kind of transition to the back of the palate with some of that kind of dense oak that's back there. But it's very soft on the palate. It coats the palate very well. This is really, really good. I really like this. This is probably one of the best Larcenys I've ever had. I haven't reviewed too many Larcenys, but I've tried them, and this is by far probably one of my favorite ones. It has a great mouthfeel, great texture to it. There's a lot of depth. Like there's more and more that's starting to kind of open up a little bit. Like I'm starting to get a little bit of like some sweet tobacco there on the back of the palate with that oak. And then as it kind of goes down, there's more. There's like an influence from like that red fruit. It's not a cherry, but it's like a mixture between like an apple and a strawberry or something like that. that went down through the finish well after it went down. But it's really starting to kind of open up and develop a little bit more on the palate. But that buttery caramel, though, is just like, it coats the palate really well. The cheeks, the soft palate, the gums. I mean, it's really nice. It's really good. Let's get a last sip, guys. Cheers. The more I sip on this, the more buttery it gets. It has a great mouthfeel, a great texture to it. It's buttery caramel, slight hint of like some vanilla sweetness. I'm not getting a lot of vanilla sweetness on the palate. It's more of like that buttery caramel. Then there's a very, very slight nuttiness that appeared there on the middle of the palate with those baking spices and that cola. The cola now has really transitioned to the back, from the mid to the back of the palate, and starting to trickle down into the finish with some of that oak, a little bit of some tobacco in there as well. And then again, as it goes down, there is this just random, very random kind of red ripe fruit flavor that kind of flows down. But the oiliness, I think between the oiliness of this one, the viscosity, and the fact again that it's very soft on the palate, I think it allows those oils just to kind of stick around the palate. This is something you could easily slowly sip on and enjoy, and just continuously get those flavors that develop there on the palate. Absolutely hitter bottle here from Heaven Hill. So I want to thank you guys for tuning into this episode of Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. And again, I want to thank my friend EJ for finding this bottle for me and sending it over to me to review on the channel. EJ, thank you very much. Much appreciated. Guys, this, in comparison to the Elijah Craig batch B523, there's a night and day difference. This is levels above the latest ECBP batch. It has a completely different mouthfeel, completely different texture to it. I understand that this one's wheat, the ECBP is not, but when you talk about flavors and depth and viscosity, like there is way more viscosity on this than that last ECBP batch. This is miles ahead of that batch. This is a fantastic bottle of whiskey. Probably right now landing in my top 10 whiskeys of the year so far. I mean, this just continuously opens up, and I just cracked this bottle, so who knows what's going to happen to this as it starts to get some air. But as of right now, this is a fantastic pour, a must-buy in my opinion. Again, big shout out to Heaven Hill for finally putting out a solid Larceny release here, guys. So if you're looking for more reviews like this, hit that subscribe button, bell notification to be alerted of any upcoming reviews or live streams. You also find me on Instagram at Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. Until next time, guys, stay dusty.